Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one. One where we dive into tons of interesting stories and books, and another where we just dive into tons of interesting topics. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about our skin. Yes, I'm going to say it here for the first time. I'm not going to try it anymore. It's part of our integumentary system. All right. Listen, hey, I took speech in second grade. What do you want from me? There's some words I can't pronounce. And I would have remembered this one if I had to pronounce it growing up. But nevertheless, it's our human skin. And we're going to attack this episode through the lens of so many questions you may have. There's so much about our skin that we obviously take for granted. And what is it and what does it do? Well, it protects us from the outside world. You got to think of the metaphor of the spacesuit out in space with the astronauts. It's not just the first line of defense, but it literally helps us do so many more things. It doesn't allow germs to get into our body. It protects us from ourselves, right? It's this kind of like injury healing perfect factory that, yeah, all right, we're injured, but our skin is coming to the rescue. It keeps water in so we don't dry out. It helps control our body temperature. It's like a thermostat. And yes, of course, it lets us feel things, whether it's hot, cold, soft, sharp, and it's our largest organ. We don't think of that, but yeah, it's all over the place, and it's certainly bigger than our brain. It has three main layers. You got to think of it like a three-layer cake. The epidermis is the top layer. That's like the paint on a wall. The dermis is the middle layer. That's kind of like obviously right underneath, whether it's plumbing or wiring. And then there's that third layer, the bottom layer, the hypodermis. And that's kind of like insulation, the padding that's there. And inside these layers are the highway system, the blood vessels, everything is right there. The nerves, which is obviously sending the messages back and forth. The sweat glands, which allow us to cool off our body. And yes, oil glands are right there. And they're kind of like the natural lotion makers. And get this, we shed 30 to 40,000 skin cells every minute. I mentioned this to my class. You talk about dust and what makes up dust. More than anything else, it's our skin. Next time you see the dust with the sun coming through a window and you just kind of see it, it's like, ugh. It's not nice to think about, but yeah, we're shedding skin all the time. As a baby, our skin, and we know this, right? It's soft, it's smooth, very sensitive. But as we get older, our skin gets thicker, stronger, and yes, unfortunately, just look at my turkey neck, it stretches. And even though, we're going to start getting wrinkles, it learns to heal faster. So, as you get older, yes, it gets thinner, it loses its stretchiness, and like I said, the wrinkles, they just start appearing. And it's, talk about a great comparison. Again, I throw out this idea about metaphors so often because it helps you to learn so much easier. You got to think of skin like a rubber band. You take that new rubber band out of the bag and it's smooth and it stretches really easily. And if you've ever, I've had lots of rubber bands. I rarely use rubber bands. And I went into my stash recently, and whether it was that one skinny one or the thick ones, the darker color ones, number one, they're not smooth. And number two, you go to stretch them and they break. Well, talk about an unbelievable comparison with our skin as we get older. Hey, Babies, they have about the same number of skin layers as adults, but theirs are a lot thinner. Let's talk about sunburns. We talked about wrinkles, but you know, we all, hopefully you haven't experienced it, but you really got to be smart, especially out in the beach. You don't feel that sunburn when it's happening, but you stay out there too long. The sun gives off ultraviolet rays, and too many of these is like overcooking our skin. Our skin turns red, and then it may start obviously hurting and peeling. A tan is actually our skin trying to protect itself from damage. And going back to the wrinkles, talk about another great metaphor. Our wrinkles, as we get older with their skin, just compare it to a balloon. The new balloon, nice and smooth and stretchy. The old balloon, it's like a wrinkled up old raisin. That's what it's like. Most wrinkles are actually caused by being out in the sun too long. It's not really age. Rashes. Yeah, a rash is our way of saying, you know what, something's not going on here. Something's not right. It could be from allergies. It could be from plants like poison ivy, heat, infections. It's really remarkable that it can be this way. And I've talked about our skin having so many functions. Talk about a warning signal. Birthmarks, moles. Moles are small groups of cells, skin cells that grow together. And birthmarks, there you go. It's a mark you just have at birth. Most are harmless, but it's important to watch for changes. Some people have, believe it or not, 100 moles on their body. And when I talk about changes, when something goes wrong on our skin, we can get skin cancer, which is the uncontrolled growth of abnormal skin cells. And it's usually caused by DNA damage from ultraviolet light, being out in the sun too long. And it basically disrupts the normal skin cell life cycle. And I say DNA damage, that's like the blueprint that we have in all of our cells. And when I say blueprint, you have to think of DNA as kind of like the instruction manual. So when things break down and cells basically refuse to die, because that is what is actually happening here, they instead multiply rapidly to form tumors. Listen, this is not an episode on cancer, and I'm not here to scare you. Just know that unfortunately, skin cancer is a reality as you get older. And there are 3 types of skin cancer. The most common is called basal cell. It usually grows very slowly. It starts in the top layer. Then there's something called squamous cell that can grow deeper. And then there's something that is the most serious that's called melanoma. And that can spread quickly. But the bottom line is that you have somebody that's a doctor that's called a dermatologist. And that doctor is a skin doctor. So absolutely, as you start getting older, every 6 months, you need to go see this type of doctor, because we are not trained to notice what particular growths, what particular all of a sudden spots on our body are good or not good. And many of them are fine, but ultimately, like I said, consult with a doctor. And I will say this, again, just for general purposes to know, a lot of these dermatologists talk about, generally speaking, you look at a specific growth in your skin, you're saying, what's up with this? Well, they talk about A, B, C, D, and actually E as well. A, asymmetry. One half of your mole or your spot doesn't match the other. You got to think of a butterfly with uneven wings. B is for border. The edges are a little different. They're jagged, they're blurry, they're uneven. It's like a puzzle piece instead of a smooth circle. C for color. Different colors. You know what? Not necessarily, brown black, red, even white sometimes. It's like a crayon that ultimately is not one solid color. It's just multiple colors. And D, diameter, meaning usually if it's larger than a pencil eraser, rather than smaller ones, that can matter. But even small ones, don't discount anything. And E is interesting because some doctors look at E being evolving. It's changing over time. Long story short, be smart. Just go see the doctor. It's so treatable. All right, moving on. Our hair. Yeah, it's part of our skin. What's up with hair? Well, it grows from tiny pockets called follicles. And you know that word. If you're losing your hair, you're concerned about your hair. Hey, I look at myself in the mirror. I look great. But on top of my head, I've got a airport runway. I am bald. And, listen, this comes from you're for the most part, you're born with this. So there's no kind of like getting away from it. But our hair, obviously, it keeps us warm. It protects sensitive areas, our eyelashes, the perfect example. It protects our eyes. And yeah, it can even help with sensing tiny movements. Why do people lose hair? Like I said, yes, it's hormones, it's genetics, which again is what you're born with. And as you get older, I'm sorry, you end up losing hair. You look at some kids, unfortunately, it happens with some of us really early as a kid. And all of a sudden you're heading into college, you're heading into your early 20s and your hair starts thinning out. We have 5 million hair follicles on our body. And one more point about hair loss. Hey, it's not just about your head, right? Very common as you get older. I used to have lots of hair on my legs. One day I looked down and it's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? All of a sudden I realized that I'm losing the hair right down to my ankles, right up through my thighs. And very often it's friction, very simple. Tight socks, right? Pants that rub against the same area every day. Typically our ankles and lower legs will start losing the hair early on. And yeah, it could be circulation changes as we get older. It decreases over time. The hair may grow slower. It can become thinner. And eventually it could just stop growing. But what is interesting and the big takeaway from this, yeah, you lose hair on your head. It's more often from genetics and hormones, believe it or not. Losing hair down the lower parts of your legs, more often friction, circulation, and again, just getting older. And another factor, you may look at some older people and say, wow, really, really wrinkled skin. And others just really, Mrs. O'Keefe, her skin is perfect. It's so beautiful. And a lot of it comes from good skincare habits, no doubt. A lot of it can come from less sun exposure, no doubt. But a lot of times, again, it just comes from genetics. I will say this, smoking, the research is clear. Smoking can definitely speed up our skin aging significantly. Now, we talked about injuries up front. We get hurt. We get cut. Our skin heals itself almost immediately. We have platelets in our blood that go right to that spot and start helping plugging the hole. These are blood clots. New skin cells start growing immediately and ultimately over time, over a number of days, certainly a week or two, we end up getting a scab that forms. Basically, it's like a construction crew, right? Going right to that spot. The small cuts, we know this, can start healing in just hours. And how about goosebumps? We've all experienced them. And think about when you get the goosebumps. When you're cold or scared or something emotional happens. What is that? Those are tiny muscles that literally pull up our hairs. Way back when with our earliest human ancestors, the goosebumps, they actually made us look bigger. to their predators. Goosebumps are fascinating. So let's just dive into this for a little bit. When we're cold, our body is trying to trap heat. Think about it. So it fluffs up the hair like animals. And it's like you got to think of a cat puffing up its fur to stay warm. Humans don't have enough thick hair anymore, so it doesn't really help that much. But that is where ultimately it's happening. When we're scared, when we're getting emotional, the body activates it's this flight or flight system. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense. So yes, with that is what makes our hair stand up. So even like when you hear music, or like I said, you're just feeling some kind of emotion, our brain and nervous system go together and go right to our skin to make that hair stand up. But ultimately, you got to think back to it's like a leftover survival tool. We don't have as much hair as obviously our predecessors, but certainly way back when it worked really well to help us survive in the past. Okay, our nails, right? We talked about not just hair, but nails make up our skin. And you got to think of them as obviously like tiny shields. Why is it do we have them on our fingers and our toes? Well, it helps us pick things up. It helps us, believe it or not, I mean, we know this, but it helps us scratch. It protects our fingertips. It protects our toes. It's made of keratin, the same material as hair is made out of. And didn't know if you knew this, but fingernails grow faster than toenails. I think if you had to think about this, you'd probably guess it. But how about throughout, in addition to the hair and the nails, how about different skin in different places and why it is? And, you know, some skin doesn't have bones underneath, right? Well, let's talk about eyelids first. They're very thin, right? Talk about our feet, the skin on our feet. We know this, thick, tough. In the places where there's no bones underneath, our earlobes and parts of our nose, but our forehead, hard as rock because we get that skull underneath protecting our brain. The thickest skin on our body, you could guess, you're right, it's the soles of our feet. And we talked about this, but clearly the nerve endings right there under the skin help us and tell our brain something's hot, something's soft, it hurts. The fingertips are the most sensitive parts of our body. Now, we've also talked about skin being our built-in cooling system. Yes, sweat is our body's air conditioner. It cools us down as it evaporates. Hey, it's very simple. You have water, right? That's why ultimately just getting into a pool, it cools us down and makes us feel better on a hot day. Well, that's what it is. It's like everybody's saying, hey, let's just jump into a pool and I'm going to make you feel better because I'm going to start sweating. We have 2 to 4 million sweat glands on our skin. And you may be thinking, how about our color of our skin? Why is it that we are different colors? Our skin is different colors. Well, it comes down to something called melanin. The more melanin we have in our skin, the darker our skin is going to be. The less we have, the lighter our skin will be. Melanin helps protect against the sun. But what was interesting is that regardless of your skin color, we all have the same number of skin cells. We talked about taking care of our skin. Well, common sense. If you're outside, you're in the garden, you got to use sunscreen, you got to stay hydrated, you got to clean your skin, right? You got to eat healthy, and you certainly got to get enough sleep. Believe it or not, our skin repairs itself mostly while we're asleep. I bet you didn't know that one. And let's talk about acne. Oh boy, just to do a short detour down here with acne, this is something that I struggled with. You look at my school picture in high school, junior year specifically, I had a really bad acne problem. Our skin, makes oil to stay soft. Too much oil can clog our skin pores, causing acne. It's one of the most common skin conditions in the world. So when our skin makes too much oil, dead skin cells clog those pores, and bacteria, this is when it's all about that pimple and that pus. Bacteria ends up growing inside. So you got to think of a pore like a tiny pipe. If oil and the dead skin end up clogging it, it's like a blocked drain, pressure builds, and there you got a pimple. Yes, acne is another word for pimples. Listen, I often wondered, I don't see too many kids, teenagers with acne anymore. There's better, and that's because there's better treatments today. I didn't benefit from this. I grew up, I was in high school. I graduated high school in 1984. Dermatologists treat acne earlier and more aggressive today. And there's the products that are out in the market. Boy, can it take care of it. So there's a lot more awareness to it. There's earlier intervention. And yeah, is it less common? Not really. It's just better managed these days. And how about this? Our skin is like a solar power plant. It doesn't just protect us, it actually makes something your body needs. I think you know this, but did you forget? Yeah. When sunlight hits our skin, it triggers a process that helps our body produce vitamin D. Our skin makes vitamin D. Sunlight comes in, the skin starts a chemical reaction, and yeah, this turns into vitamin D. It's so important. So if you're vitamin D deficient with so many different vitamins, and again, talk about different episodes with different types of vitamins, think about it. As you get older, you learn more about this. Wait a minute. You got problems with vitamin D, you got to get outside more often. But if you get outside more often, you're worried about exposure to the sun and sunburns and skin cancer, this and that. But, vitamin D is important because it helps our body absorb calcium. It makes our bones strong, and certainly it helps with our immune system. So, too little sun, not enough vitamin D. Too much sun, skin damage. It's like this constant tightrope. So let's wrap up our podcast with just a couple other items. If you've been thinking all along, what about our fingerprints? What's up with them, specifically since they're so unique and everyone's fingerprint is different? They're tiny raised ridges or grooves on our skin, specifically on our fingertips, right? There's loops, there's curves, there's arches, and you got to think of them, again, another great metaphor. They're like our natural tire treads that are built into our skin. The ridges are part of a special kind of skin called friction ridges. Obviously, you think about it, why do we have them? Well, they help us grip, they help us touch. I mean, they're on our fingers, but they're elsewhere. They're on our fingertips, they're on our palms, they're on the soles of our feet, our toes. Really, think about it. They're all in the places where we need to grip, where we need to walk, where we need to balance. Other parts of our skin don't need to grip, so they stay and they are smoother. Why are everyone's fingerprints different? They form, believe it or not, before we're born, while we're still in the womb. We're in our mother's belly. They're shaped by our genes. They're shaped by tiny movements and pressures in the womb. And they're shaped by fluid flow around our fingers. It's like making patterns in wet sand. There's small differences and they can create completely unique designs. That's why no two people have the same fingerprints, not even identical twins. And here's one more cool detail. They're deeply rooted in our skin layers. So even if the top layer gets scraped, the pattern usually grows back the same. It's amazing. And how about this one? I referenced this before about the fact that our skin repairs itself while we're sleeping, while we're protected under the covers. this is actually what's literally happening during the day when it's out in the elements. It's in protect mode. And obviously when we're sleeping, it's in repair mode. Really interesting. Now, calluses. Calluses form when our skin experiences repeated rubbing and pressure. So it basically builds this extra layer of skin, becomes thicker and harder, and obviously protects the skin underneath. So you'll see calluses if you're working specifically constantly with your hands or your feet. That's where you'll find them. And again, the metaphor is just a protected extra protection of extra padding. And blisters, we all know them. Boy, if you've ever been not taking care of your feet, if you got, whether it's shoes that are too tight or too loose, it happens when we're constantly rubbing our skin too strong or too fast. And instead of building up slowly like a callus, the skin basically says, whoa, hold on. The top layer basically disappears and fluid fills the space underneath. And again, another metaphor, you got to think of it like a water balloon that's forming under our skin. And why is it that our body does this? Well, the fluid is acting like a cushion. It's protecting the damaged area underneath while it heals. I mentioned new shoes. I mentioned, hey, again, long walks. Bottom line, repetitive friction at the same spot. Even I've had it when raking without gloves on. Simple difference, calluses, slow, long-term protection. Blisters are quick, short-term protection. Yeah, blisters is our skin's way of saying, you know what, you're messing with me. I'm going to protect myself. So it's an injury, but it's not. It's our body's way of saying, okay, come on, I got to help you out. You're not being smart. Our skin is far more than just a covering. It's living, thinking, reaction system that protects us, that senses our world, it repairs itself, and it even produces essential nutrients like vitamin D. Friends, thanks for staying with me on this journey, learning all about our skin. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group called OK Let's Learn. We are on YouTube. Just search for OK Let's Learn. Always appreciate the 5-star ratings, any reviews that you can put out on Apple Podcasts. And speaking of Apple Podcasts, you want to follow the show, that can definitely help. You will get a new episode automatically on your phone every time we release it. Just hit that plus button in the top right-hand corner. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.